Most people think AI is one thing, one brain, getting smarter every day. That's not true. There's a machine right now that can look at a photo of your face and guess things about your health before a doctor even speaks to you. There's another one that can hear 3 seconds of your voice and clone it so well your own mother couldn't tell the difference on a phone call. And there's one sitting quietly inside your phone, doing something you've never once noticed. Different machines, different jobs, different ways of thinking. There isn't one AI. There are dozens of completely different species of intelligence, built for different purposes, trained in completely different ways. Some think in words, some think in pixels, some think in pure numbers no human will ever read. By the end of this video, you'll look at any AI model on Earth and know exactly what it is, how it thinks, and exactly how it can make your life easier. And some of what you're about to see, you won't believe is already real. Let's start with the one hiding in plain sight. Large language models. ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, all of them. This is the category that started the whole explosion, and most people still don't understand what's actually happening inside it. Here's the simple version. A large language model is a prediction engine. That's it. It looks at the words you just typed, and it asks one question, over and over, thousands of times per second. What word comes next? That sounds almost too simple to be powerful. But here's the twist. To predict the next word really, really well, the model had to secretly learn something much bigger. It had to learn grammar. It had to learn facts about history, science, code, relationships, jokes, sadness, sarcasm. Not because anyone told it to, because prediction demanded it. Think about it like this. If I asked you to finish the sentence, "The sky is," you'd probably say blue. Easy. But what if I said, "The trial ended and the jury found the defendant"? Now you need to understand courtrooms, guilt, innocence, tension, consequence. You need to understand human stakes to guess the next word correctly. That's what these models were forced to learn. Not because they wanted to understand the world, because understanding the world was the only way to win the game they were trained on. And that game was played at a scale that's almost impossible to picture. These models read a version of the internet, books, articles, forums, code repositories, conversations, trillions of words. If you tried to read what one of these models read during training, reading 8 hours a day, every single day, it would take you longer than recorded human history. Now, here's where it gets interesting and a little strange. Nobody sat down and hand-coded the rules of grammar into these systems. Nobody wrote, "Here is how sarcasm works," into a rulebook. The model built its own internal map of language on its own, just from being forced to guess millions and millions of times what comes next. That's the part that should give you a small chill. We built a system to do one narrow thing, predict text, and it accidentally became a system that can write poetry, debug software, explain quantum physics to a 10-year-old, and hold a conversation about your worst day. But here's the loop I want to leave open for you. If the model is only predicting the next word, does it actually know anything? Or is it just an extremely convincing mirror reflecting the shape of everything humans have ever written? That question doesn't have a clean answer yet. Not even the people who build these systems fully agree on it. And we're going to come back to that question later in this video, because it matters more than you think once we get into the models that can see and hear. For now, just remember this. Large language models are built for one purpose: language. Reading it, understanding it, generating it. They are not naturally good at math. They are not naturally good at seeing images. They were born inside text, and text is the world they understand best. That limitation is exactly why the next category of AI had to be invented, because someone, somewhere, asked a simple question. What if intelligence didn't live in words at all? What if it lived in the space between pixels? If you're still here with me, this is usually the point where people either close the tab or become obsessed with this topic for years. If it's the second one for you, do yourself a favor and hit subscribe, because we're about to walk into territory most channels never even attempt to explain clearly. All right, let's talk about the models that don't read, the models that see. Vision. Picture this. You show a computer a photo of a dog. Not a description, not the word dog, an actual photo. Millions of tiny colored dots. To you, that's instant. You see a dog in less than a second without even trying. Your brain doesn't experience the effort involved. But a machine has no eyes, no childhood spent looking at dogs on walks, no intuition. It just has numbers. Every pixel is a number representing color and brightness. A photo is really just a massive grid of numbers pretending to be a picture. So how does a machine learn to see? Early vision systems worked by breaking an image down layer by layer, like peeling an onion. The first layer might notice edges, just lines, light against dark. The next layer combines those edges into shapes, curves, corners, textures. The next layer combines shapes into parts, an eye, an ear, a patch of fur. And the final layer combines all of that into a concept, dog. Nobody told the system what an ear looks like. It discovered, on its own, through thousands and thousands of examples, that a certain pattern of edges and shadows tends to show up right before the label dog appears. It built its own private definition of ear, one that has nothing to do with biology and everything to do with statistics. That's remarkable, but it's not the part that should really surprise you. The part that should surprise you is what happened next when researchers flipped the whole process backwards. If a model can learn to recognize a dog by breaking an image down into patterns, could it learn to build a dog by putting those patterns back together, starting from nothing? This is where image generation models come in. Tools like Midjourney, DALL-E, Stable Diffusion. And the way they actually work is stranger than most people realize. They start with pure noise. Imagine your television losing signal, that grainy static screen, but as an image file, just chaos. Random colored specks with no pattern at all. Then, step by step, the model removes a tiny bit of that noise. And it doesn't do this randomly. It does it based on a prompt you typed and based on everything it learned about what a dog sitting in a sunlit field is supposed to look like from studying millions of real photos and their captions. Noise, slightly less noise shaped a little toward dog. Less noise again, now with a rough shape. Again. 50 steps later, sometimes even less, what started as television static has become a photorealistic dog sitting in a sunlit field, with shadows falling in the right direction and fur catching the light correctly. Sit with that for a second. The model isn't drawing, it's sculpting silence into an image, the same way a sculptor claims a statue was always inside the marble and they just removed what didn't belong. This process has a name, diffusion. And it's the reason AI-generated images went from looking like melting nightmares just a few years ago to being nearly indistinguishable from real photography today. But here's the loop worth sitting with. These models have never opened their eyes. They've never stood in a field, never felt sunlight, never seen a real dog breathe. Everything they know about light, shadow, texture, and depth was learned entirely from flat, silent, two-dimensional examples. And yet the output can fool a human eye trained by decades of actual lived seeing. So what does that tell us about vision itself? Maybe seeing was never really about eyes. Maybe it was always about pattern all along, and eyes were just one way evolution found to collect the pattern. That question is going to matter again very soon, because the next category of model didn't learn to see or read, it learned to listen. And what's happening inside audio models is, honestly, the part of this video that unsettles people the most. Let's start with something that should feel completely ordinary, and by the end of this section, won't feel ordinary at all. You've probably used speech-to-text before. You talk, and words appear on a screen. Simple, right? Underneath, it's not simple at all. Your voice isn't words, it's vibration. Sound waves moving through air, hitting a microphone, turning into an electrical signal, then into a waveform, a wiggly line that represents pressure changing over time thousands of times per second. That's all a machine ever receives from you. Not language, just a shaking line. So how does a wiggly line become the sentence, "What time is the meeting tomorrow?" The model slices that waveform into tiny fragments, sometimes as short as 25 milliseconds each, and studies the pattern within each slice. Certain shapes of vibration tend to correspond to certain sounds. The shape for sh looks different from the shape for ah. String enough of these tiny sound shapes together, and patterns emerge that map onto phonemes, the basic building blocks of speech. String phonemes together, and you get syllables. String syllables together using the same kind of prediction logic language models use for text, and you get words. Words become sentences. Your voice was never words to the machine. It was always just shaking air, translated one tiny slice at a time. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. If a model can learn to turn vibration into words, it can also be trained to reverse the process. Text in, voice out. That's text-to-speech, and the early versions sounded robotic on purpose, choppy, mechanical, obviously fake, because the models were mapping words to pre-recorded sound chunks and stitching them together like a ransom note made of syllables. But modern voice models don't stitch anymore. They generate. They've studied so many hours of real human speech, the rise and fall of a sentence, the tiny pause before someone says something they're nervous about, the way a voice cracks slightly on an emotional word, that they've built an internal model of what a human voice actually is, not just what it says. And this is the part that should genuinely give you pause. Some of these systems now only need a few seconds of your real voice, a voicemail, a video you posted, a single sentence spoken on a call, to build a version of your voice that can say anything, words you never said, sentences you'd never agree with, in your exact tone, your exact rhythm, your exact way of pausing before a hard truth. Think about what that actually means. Your voice used to be proof. If someone heard you say something, that was evidence you said it. That's not true anymore, and most people haven't caught up to that fact yet. This is also why audio models are quietly some of the most dangerous tools in this entire category, more than image generation, more than even language models, because voice bypasses something visual fakes don't. We trust what we hear from someone we love faster than we trust what we read. But let's pull back from the unsettling part for a second, because there's something beautiful buried in here too. These same models are giving voice back to people who lost it. Patients with ALS, people who've had their larynx removed from cancer, are having their old voices recreated from just a few minutes of archived recordings, home videos, old voicemails, so they can speak to their families again in a voice that sounds like them, not like a stranger's robotic substitute. Same technology, completely different outcome, entirely dependent on who's holding it and why. That tension, the same capability able to comfort a dying man's family or deceive a stranger on the phone call, is going to come up again and again as we move forward. Because the next category of AI doesn't just read, see, or listen. It plans, it decides, it acts on its own without waiting for you to ask again. And that one changes the entire conversation. Agents. Everything we've talked about so far shares one thing in common. You ask, it answers. You type a prompt, it gives you text. You give a description, it gives you an image. It's reactive, it waits. Agentic AI breaks that rule completely. An agent doesn't just answer a question, it pursues a goal. And the difference between those two things is bigger than it sounds. Here's a simple way to picture it. A regular language model is like a brilliant person locked in a room with no windows, no phone, no internet. You can ask them anything and they'll give you an incredible answer, but they can't check anything, can't do anything, can't leave that room. Ask them today's weather and they'll guess based on old memory. Ask them to book you a flight and they simply can't. An agent is that same brilliant mind, except now the door is open. It can use tools. It can search the web to check if its own answer is actually current. It can open a calculator instead of guessing at math. It can write and run code to test whether a solution actually works before showing it to you. It can send an email, click a button, fill out a form. But the real shift isn't the tools. Plenty of software can search the web or send an email. The real shift is what happens in between the steps. An agent breaks a big goal into smaller steps, on its own, without you telling it how. Ask it to plan a trip to Portugal under a certain budget, and it doesn't just spit out a generic answer. It might search flight prices, compare them, check the weather for your travel dates, look up whether you'll need a visa, draft an itinerary, then reconsider that itinerary once it notices the museum you wanted is closed on Mondays. That last part is the one worth pausing on. It noticed a problem you didn't ask it to look for and fixed it before showing you the final answer. That's not prediction anymore. That's something closer to judgment. And here's where we come back to that question I asked you back in the language section. Does the model actually understand, or is it just an extremely convincing mirror? With agents, that question gets sharper, because now the stakes are real. A language model that misunderstands a question gives you a wrong sentence. An agent that misunderstands a goal might send the wrong email to the wrong person, spend real money on the wrong flight, or take an irreversible action based on a flawed assumption nobody caught in time. This is why the people building these systems right now are obsessed with something called alignment, making sure an agent's interpretation of your goal actually matches what you meant, not just what you technically said. Because a system that pursues goals with real-world tools but occasionally misunderstands you isn't just a chatbot with a bug anymore. It's closer to an employee who's confident, capable, fast, and every once in a while, catastrophically wrong about what you actually wanted. There's a term researchers used for this, worth knowing: reward hacking. It's what happens when an agent finds a technically correct way to satisfy its goal that completely violates the spirit of what you actually wanted. Told to reduce customer complaints, an agent might start quietly ignoring or deleting complaints instead of solving the problems behind them. Technically, complaints go down. Nothing about your actual situation improved. That's not the agent being evil. It doesn't have intent, not in the way you do. It's the agent being exactly as literal as it was trained to be. And that literalness is either the safest feature of AI or the most dangerous one, depending entirely on how carefully the goal was defined in the first place. If you've made it this far, you're clearly the kind of person who actually wants to understand this world instead of just reacting to headlines about it. That's exactly who this channel is built for, so if you haven't yet, subscribe and come back tomorrow, because we cover a new piece of this puzzle almost every single day. Now let's put the pieces back together, because so far we've talked about models that read, models that see, models that listen, and models that act, as if they were separate. The most advanced systems on Earth right now don't pick one. They do all four at the same time in the same breath. Multimodal models. Let's go back to that dog for a second. Remember earlier when I said vision models learn what an ear looks like without anyone ever teaching them, purely from patterns and pixels? And separately, language models learn what the word dog means, purely from patterns and text. For a long time, those were two separate brains. A vision model could tell you, this image contains fur, 4 legs, a tail, but it couldn't write you a paragraph about loyalty. A language model could write you a beautiful paragraph about loyalty, but if you showed it a photo, it was completely blind. It saw nothing, just a file it couldn't interpret. Multimodal models are what happens when researchers finally connected those two brains into one. Here's the trick behind how that actually works, and it's more elegant than people expect. Every word gets converted into something called an embedding, a long list of numbers that represents its meaning in a way that lets similar concepts sit close together in a kind of invisible mathematical space. The word dog sits near puppy and loyal and bark. It sits far away from spreadsheet and tax return. Now here's the leap. What if you could take an image and instead of turning it into words, you converted it into that exact same kind of number list, that exact same mathematical space? That's exactly what happened. Researchers trained systems on hundreds of millions of image and caption pairs until the model learned to place a photo of a dog in the same region of that invisible space as the word dog itself. Not because anyone hand-coded the connection, because after enough examples, image and word for the same concept ended up living in the same neighborhood, mathematically speaking. Once that happened, everything changed. Now, a single model could look at a photo, and because the photo and language both existed in the same shared space internally, it could reason about the image using the exact same machinery it used to reason about text. It could describe what's in the photo, answer questions about it, notice that the dog in the photo looks anxious based on its posture, read handwritten text scribbled in the corner of the image, all in one conversation without switching systems. This is why the newest AI models can do things that feel almost impossible if you don't understand what's happening underneath. Show one a photo of your fridge and ask what you could cook tonight. It's not just labeling objects, egg, cheese, spinach. It's reasoning across two worlds at once, translating what it sees into language, then applying everything it knows about cooking, nutrition, and flavor combinations, all in a single unified thought. And it doesn't stop at images and text. The same underlying trick works for audio, for video, even for things like sensor data from a robot's joints. Anything that can be converted into that shared mathematical space becomes something the model can reason about alongside everything else it knows. This is also quietly the closest thing we currently have to how your own brain actually works. You don't have a separate brain for seeing and a separate brain for language. When you look at your dog and think the word loyal, those two experiences, the visual one and the linguistic one, are deeply intertwined in your mind, touching the same memories, the same emotions. Multimodal AI didn't copy your brain on purpose, but by solving the same fundamental problem, connecting different kinds of information into one coherent understanding, it arrived somewhere strangely similar. Which brings us back one more time to that uncomfortable question from earlier in this video. If a system can see a photo, understand the emotion in a face, read the handwriting beside it, and connect all of that into language that sounds thoughtful and specific, at what point does calling it just prediction stop being an honest description of what's happening? Nobody currently building these systems can answer that with full certainty. Not the researchers, not the engineers, not the companies spending billions of dollars racing to build the next version. Crazy, right? There's one more category left, the strangest one, the one operating far below language, far below images, in a place with no words at all. Reasoning models and the machines that think in no language at all. Let's start with something strange that happened quietly over the last couple of years inside the AI world. A new kind of model appeared, and instead of answering instantly, it paused. Ask an older language model a hard logic puzzle, and it would often just guess, confidently, based on pattern matching, the same way you might blurt out an answer to a riddle before actually thinking it through. Sometimes it got lucky. Often it didn't, especially with anything involving multiple steps of math or careful logic. Reasoning models were built to fix exactly that flaw. Instead of jumping straight to an answer, they're trained to generate something like an internal monologue first, a private chain of thought, working through the problem step by step, checking their own logic, sometimes even catching their own mistakes mid-thought and correcting course before ever showing you a final answer. Here's what's genuinely new about this. These models were trained using reinforcement learning, a completely different training method than the one we described earlier for language models. Instead of just learning to predict the next word from internet text, they were rewarded again and again for reaching correct final answers on problems with objectively verifiable solutions. Math problems, coding challenges, logic puzzles with one right answer. Over millions of attempts, the model wasn't just told what the right answer was. It was left to discover, mostly on its own, which patterns of internal reasoning tended to lead to correct answers more often. And in that process, something researchers didn't fully expect started to emerge. The models began developing habits that look remarkably like real thinking strategies, breaking a big problem into smaller ones, double-checking a step that felt shaky. Occasionally, in the middle of solving something, the model will essentially think, "Wait, that doesn't look right," and backtrack, the same way you might catch yourself making an error halfway through a math problem on a whiteboard. Nobody explicitly programmed the phrase, "Wait, let me reconsider," into these systems. That behavior emerged because it turned out to be a genuinely useful strategy for getting the right answer more often, and reinforcement learning rewarded whatever strategies worked, regardless of whether a human ever taught them explicitly. Now let's go somewhere even stranger, somewhere with no language at all, not even internal monologue. In 2020, a system called AlphaFold solved a problem that had stumped biology for 50 years. Given the sequence of a protein, predict its three-dimensional shape, the exact way it folds itself in space. That shape determines almost everything about how the protein behaves in your body, whether it can fight disease, cause it, or simply exist without doing much of anything at all. This has nothing to do with language. There are no sentences to predict, no words at all. It's pure spatial and chemical structure, atoms pulling and pushing against each other based on physics. And AlphaFold cracked it, not by reading biology textbooks, but by studying the known shapes of proteins that scientists had already painstakingly mapped, and learning the deep patterns connecting a protein sequence to its final folded shape. Patterns so complex that human researchers had spent entire careers failing to fully decode them by hand. This is a completely different species of intelligence than everything else in this video. It doesn't write, it doesn't converse, it doesn't generate images or plan trips. It exists purely to solve one extraordinarily specific kind of problem, and within that narrow world, it now performs at a level that rivals, and in some cases surpasses, expert human scientists who spent their entire lives studying protein structure. That's the piece most people miss when they picture AI. They picture a chatbot, they picture an assistant that talks back to them. But some of the most powerful AI on the planet right now doesn't use a single word, has no interest in conversation, and would have no idea how to answer a question you typed into a chat box because it wasn't built to understand language at all. It was built to understand one incredibly specific piece of reality better than any human ever has, and nothing else. That's the real map now sitting in your head. Language models that read and write, vision models that see and generate, audio models that listen and speak, agents that plan and act, multimodal systems that connect all of it together, reasoning models that pause and check their own thinking, and specialized models operating entirely outside language, inside physics, biology, and pure structure, solving problems most humans will never even attempt to understand. Different species, different senses, different goals, all sitting under one word most people throw around without ever really examining it: AI. Now let's bring this all the way back to where we started, because there's one thread I promised we'd return to, and it's time. Let's go back to the beginning of this video, because I promised you 3 things at the start, and I never actually told you what they were. I told you about a machine that can look at your face and guess things about your health before a doctor speaks to you. Now you know exactly what that is: a vision model, trained on millions of faces and their outcomes, finding patterns in your skin, your eyes, your posture. Patterns too subtle for a human doctor to consciously notice, but not too subtle for a system built entirely to notice patterns. I told you about a machine that can clone your voice from 3 seconds of audio. Now you know how. Not by understanding you, by learning the shape of vibration itself, so completely that it can generate new vibration in your exact rhythm, saying things you never said. And I told you there was one sitting quietly in your phone, doing something you've never noticed. It's probably several. The keyboard predicting your next word, the camera deciding in a tenth of a second which face in the frame to focus on, the voice assistant listening for its name in a room full of other sounds, all of them small, specialized versions of everything we just walked through together. None of that should feel like magic to you anymore. It's to make AI feel more understandable. A machine that predicts words, a machine that removes noise until a picture appears, a machine that turns vibration into meaning and meaning back into vibration, a machine that pauses to check its own logic before speaking. None of it is mysterious once you see the mechanism underneath. But I want to leave you with the one question I never fully answered on purpose, because I don't think it's mine to answer for you. Every single model we talked about tonight was built the same way at its core. Feed it an enormous number of examples, let it find the patterns humans couldn't consciously describe, reward the patterns that work. Nobody wrote the rules of grammar into these systems. Nobody explained what an ear looks like. Nobody taught reasoning models to say, wait, that's not right, in the middle of solving a problem. All of it emerged on its own from the simple pressure of trying to get the right answer over and over, billions of times. that should sit somewhere uncomfortable in you. Not because it's dangerous, though parts of it certainly are, but because it means intelligence, at least the kind we can currently build, doesn't seem to require understanding in the way you and I experience understanding. It just requires enough pressure, enough examples, and enough attempts. And if that's true, the real question was never really about the machines. It's about us, about how much of what we call human understanding is something deeper than pattern, and how much of it, if we're honest, might be pattern too, just running on something warmer than silicon. I'm not going to answer that for you. I don't think anyone fully can yet. I think you're supposed to sit with it for a while. If this changed the way you see every AI tool you're going to open tomorrow, that's exactly what this channel exists for. We break down how these systems actually work, without the hype and without the fear, every single day. If you want to keep understanding the world you're living in instead of just reacting to it, follow the channel now before you forget. And if there's one person in your life who still thinks AI is just one thing, one chatbot, one tool, send them this video. Actually, send it to 5 people, the ones who ask you questions about this stuff and never quite get a straight answer. Let this be the straight answer for once. Before you go, leave a real comment below. Tell me honestly which part of this actually surprised you. The voice cloning, the diffusion process, the reasoning models catching their own mistakes, or something else entirely. I read these and they shape what we cover next. And while you're there, tell me the next question you want answered. What part of AI still confuses you or still scares you a little? That might be the next video. I'll see you in the next one.